Okay. Ask questions if you find the need to ask questions through this. I'm happy to interrupt what I'm doing. But otherwise, I'll just rattle on and we'll see how it goes. Um, all right. You know who I am. I'm Peter Hansen. I'm chaplain with the Chico Police for the last 26 years. Been the president past 17 years and then vice president currently the last 7 years and the trainer for our program. So I welcome you all to this program and I hope that it's a benefit to all of you. And this first class, a good introduction into the whole law enforcement chaplaincy idea and policing profession and culture. So that's me, and you got my cell phone, which is also text, and you've all contacted me, so you know how to do that. First things first, at sometime soon, if you have chosen to become a chaplain with us, and we've done this with Tony, we'll take you into the uniform store and get you uniformed up. There are 3 basic levels of uniform for us. There's the A class level, which is a suit with a tie or a little, females often wear the little black neck thing. I don't know how you call that, but it's under the collar instead of a tie. So navy blue suit. I call it the cheap suit, which is it's a polyester suit, but it's got all the insignias and badges and things on it that identify us with police, but as chaplains. Then there's also a B class uniform, which we go out into the field with. So that's the one you use most of the time. It's a gray uniform jersey, and over that we fit a ballistic vest that helps you when you're in the field be safe from physical danger. And whereas outside the clothing in a way that coordinates with that, you'll see what that is. And there you wear your own pants, black pants and black shoes. Then there's jackets and things that go with that, also with insignias on it. Then we have an informal polyester or whatever kind of like a golf shirt that's just stitched for informal events. So we will buy that stuff for you. You'll buy your own black pants because everybody has those anyway. But the uniform is by our chaplaincy. Wait a minute. We've laid out a schedule of classes for this. It's pretty aggressive. We'll see if it happens. If you do prove through and you're interviewed by the police chief and succeed at that, we'll get you live scanned through the police department so that that's cleared through the FBI and the Department of Justice of California law enforcement. Make sure that they're not looking for you somewhere. We'll take photo ID and arrange for your badge, and we'll try to set up a ride along or more so that you can get acquainted with the procedures of going out in the field. This is a new way of culture for each of us. It's a new culture. We go into their world. We abandon some of our identities and particulars, and we go in. Now we're going to be using titles a lot of the time. As we get to know the officers, they'll welcome our use of first names. That's not a violation, but we start with titles. Officer so-and-so, Sergeant so-and-so, and we show them respect with that. And they'll show it back to you. They'll want to know your title, chaplain so-and-so or pastor something or other. This is a pastoral role, not a police role. It's good to remember that. You get all dressed up in policey kind of uniform, and it's kind of easy to adopt a police stature, and you get all tough guy. But we're not that. We flow with it. We can be in the flow along with their law enforcement modes. But we just have to keep reminding us we're not wannabes. We're not going in there guns blasting. We're chaplains, and we have to remain that as we work with them. And as chaplains, we are to be reactive. That is, when something happens, then afterwards we come as crisis response. We come to major emergencies that are public. We also come to police-related crises when an officer or another is involved in shootings, for instance. Things that happen, we respond to as we are assigned. It's important to know you don't self-assign when something has happened. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't, but we need to be deployed by the dispatch and not just when we feel like it because we're chaplains and we ought to show up for such and such an event. We need to be given the empowerment by the police department to go into these situations. Then we're under their cover, which is important to know. They need to know that you're there and not just showing up with a uniform and a badge. We do death notifications. Somebody dies, usually in a remote or another county or someplace, and the next of kin need to be notified here in Chico. So we go out with an officer or meet an officer there at the home, go in and notify people. The third class today will be about death notifications, so I won't go into that right now. Or a death in the home, and that's generally termed 1144. It's kind of code language. But that means dead body, cause of death not yet established. And so when somebody wakes up in the morning and finds somebody has died in the house or apartment, we go in with the cops and find a lot of interesting rules, because since the death cause has not been established, it could be a crime, and the police have to cordon off the area, ask people to stay out of certain zones, and it may be their home, and then we get to be with them and giving them information, telling them what happens next, being a liaison between the cops on the other side of the yellow tape, or just the crisis area, and so forth. We may also be involved in accidents. There have been some train accidents where trains run over people here in the public area, and sometimes in those cases, or there was a case several years back where a truck came across the median on 99 and killed a bus full of people, kids. That was a big disaster. Chaplains were dispatched to that. We may also be part of a tactical team like CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management follow-up after a critical incident, where the cops themselves and other emergency response personnel need aftercare ministry. If we're trained for that, we're part of that team and we can be there. It's a reactive or after the fact kind of thing. We are also very proactive. We do ride-alongs. That's when nothing is happening particularly, but we schedule and go with the cops and ride in the right seat. That's a lot of fun, and that's really where the action happens. We get to know the officers. They get to see us and know us, how we work with them. We may make hospital calls when cops are in the hospital. Citywide events happen, and we may be called out to participate in that, like the Every 15 Minutes program, which talks about how every 15 minutes someone dies in America due to a alcohol-related auto accident. And that program is put on every other year in the Chico schools here. It's an exceptionally important and good impacting program. We do invocations at City Council. We're invited definitely by our City Council to do one invocation a month, and so we split that up among the chaplains. We may be called in by the police personnel to do their weddings and or funerals. We also can set up police officer fellowships and then provide private counseling. So these are proactive things that do something not after the effect, but just along with the police life. In administrative role, we plan chaplain events, we attend departmental meetings, and we have our own chaplaincy meetings, which happen every month at the fourth or last Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. in our Detectives Bureau They have a meeting room that's got a boardroom table that works well for us. So we go back in there and meet, talk about chaplaincy business and things that we're pertaining to. And then we share the stories of things that have happened during the last month or more when we've been impacted and done stuff, because it's important to debrief and share. It's good to share your mistakes because then we all benefit from them, or your successes as well. And then we are always in training. We are always training in one way or another. We locally train and remind ourselves what we have learned. We try to do some of that through our annual or monthly meetings. We are not officially a part, but I'm officially trained by the ICPC, the International Conference of Police Chaplains, that has annual training sessions throughout somewhere in the country, and also regionally. Region 6, which is the western states, has annual training sessions. These classes I'm giving are modeled on the ICPC model of 12 basic classes that are considered important and essential in chaplaincy. So I kind of use those, then I add 2 of my own that have happened through my experience here. But if you would like to go to one of these regional or national annual trainings, we welcome that. In fact, we would pay your way because you bring back an awful lot of great information and we can benefit from that. So we're always in training and want to be growing. Don't just assume that we know everything. I don't. The minimum qualifications for a chaplain and chaplain's program is an ecclesiastical covering. That is, that all of us here are ordained or licensed as ministers with a church, synagogue, some recognized and acceptable religious body. You have the authorization of that church body for your service as chaplain. We need a written letter by your church to say, we authorize so-and-so to serve as a chaplain for the Chico Police Department. So we extend that covering out. And then the training, this course, and your continued education. Availability, you've got to be able to show up. You have to have the physical capacity to do the things. They aren't going to be arduous, but you got to be able to get there and adapt to the situations at hand and have the commitment to do this work. So I'm going to put some effort out to train all of you, and we're hopefully going to find you're qualified to receive the monies that'll take over $1,000 to equip you and uniform you. But we want the commitment on your side too, to say, yeah, I'm willing to do this. I'm going to do this for a time. And this takes a little bit of courage to go out. And I'm not saying we're going to put you in physical danger, but to go out in a completely different environment with all these uniformed men and women with guns. Everybody in the police department has guns except the administration staff and the dispatch. So can't be afraid of guns or tough language.
Amen.
All right. Further minimum qualifications, have a broad base of community ministry. Understand that your ministry is bigger than your own church, of course, and a valid driver's license and your own insurance for that. We've talked about the uniform. We'll talk about that more personally when we get in close contact with you. Equipment is variable, but there's a small list of that. You can look at it in the written information. And an ID. When you become a chaplain, you're going to be chaplain number 16 or something like that. Radio designation, you're chaplain 6 or chaplain 16 or chaplain whatever. I'm chaplain 7 and have been for 26 years now. The radio designation, you can also be chaplain Hartman. That's English is possible. You can use English. Any questions so far? I'm rattling off pretty quickly, but how are we doing?
I think you're doing wonderful. You're answering all my questions as you go along.
Good. Well, that's what I want to hear. Perfect. Thank you, Carla. All right, important rules to follow. You never use your chaplaincy to influence law enforcement. If you get pulled over by a cop, you don't find your chaplain ID and flap it out the window and say, hey, 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 give me a break. If they recognize you and say, oh, chaplain, you know how fast you were going there? Well, I don't really know. All right, I'll let you go this time. I mean, if it happens, thank God for it, but we're not using our chaplaincy to influence law enforcement.
Right.
We don't also call the cops and say, hey, you should do something differently than you do. That's not our role. You have a bearing and discipline. You certainly must offer respect and therefore earn the respect of the cops. They will test you and you'll prove out true or untrue, but you'll have an ability to wear your chaplaincy respectability. And it's a nice feeling when it works. They are definitely not hard to get to know and hard to get to like. I'll say that about Chico particularly. There are police forces that might be different, but our Chico PD is a very open society, and they're good people. I like them a lot. So another rule is not to speak to media. As police chaplain so-and-so, we're asking you about what do you think happened here today. You don't do that, period. Redirect them to the department authorization. There are public information officers in our Chico PD. They have the job of talking to the media. We never do. Don't do it. Don't go to the police or don't go to the city hall and in the city council meeting and stand up in a uniform and offer an opinion. Don't do that. We've had that happen, and chaplains have been drummed out for that because you're carrying the authority of the police department on your uniform and then telling the city government what it ought to do. That doesn't look good to the police chiefs. So remember that. Never publicly criticize our police officers. You may have criticism and there may be something valid to talk about, and that's okay. We'll tell you how to do that. But in the public, we uphold the law enforcement personnel because they do an important job and they don't need to be undermined by us. Never question an officer's actions or question an officer's actions only privately. We maintain their dignity at all times. And confidentiality, there's a real legal confidentiality, but we have a training on that that's upcoming. And I'll be teaching you what that means in the terms of our ministry with cops. Okay. Now people may say, what are you doing? You're a church person and you're working in the world, but you're bringing Jesus into this is tax paid service and you got religion here. Hey, this is a violation of church state. We've all kind of heard that argument sometimes. It could be a violation if we do it wrong. So, but we do have a valid argument for carrying out a chaplaincy within this municipal organization. But a chaplaincy must have a secular purpose, that is a non-religious based purpose, stated by the program. That is, we do provide grief counseling, stress relief counseling, site support, etc. Those things don't need to be the only purposes of our things, but we may have a statement that says, like I believe ours does, the Volunteer Police Chaplaincy Program is designed to provide non-denominational physical, mental, and spiritual support to department personnel and victims of crimes and tragedies within the city of Chico, 24-hour service to the Chico community. Okay, that's a secular purpose, not a religious purpose, wherein we might try to convert anyone or to our religious system of belief. We're not there for that. There may be religious elements to what we do that has to be asked for, an expression of our own faith because of who we are, but it's not illegal to be who you are. You just have to watch out for extending yourself too much or inserting yourself too forcefully into a situation. We also practice religious neutrality, which means that the religious information you may carry with you is not brought forward unless it's asked for or seems to be offered or asked, determined. I'll show you situations where you do offer it, but it is not going to be pressed. You do not come into a situation with a religious message. The situation, therefore, may call it out, and our response will not violate the law. I was all night with a police shooting situation that had a lot of people keyed up, and at the end of it, they grouped everybody together and did a recap of what they discovered and how they went through it. But they first all asked for me as a chaplain present to offer up a prayer. That was a perfect situation to give a good prayer, and they asked for it. You go when and we are asked for. You are a volunteer corps, and your assignment is simply to be available. You don't have a duty to impress our faith on anyone. You're non-denominational. Only ordained or licensed ministers of a recognized body are qualified as chaplains. Third issue is avoidance of religious entanglement. We must avoid excessive religious entanglement, and this means that there is no bias, no favoritism toward different types of officers or victims. We go to all, showing no bias. We will minister to someone of another faith, different lifestyle, no faith at all. Where they're to minister is appropriate to that individual, and that's where we're headed. Fourth and final argument is that there is a history of chaplaincy throughout the world where the government overlaps the church in this unique way. The military always provides chaplaincy for its soldiers. Hospital chaplaincies overlap a sort of a public ministry along with religious. Legislative houses of government, the law enforcement, the Supreme Court has a chaplain, for heaven's sake. So
Wow.
there is no violation of church and state when you've got the top governmental offices with their own chaplains. There's long been a presence of chaplains to minister to the whole person, not just the body or to the soul or to the spirit, but to the whole person. Okay, so that's our argument for chaplaincy. We're not there to sell our personal religion. We're there to provide a service positively. That's why we allow people of other faiths into the chaplaincy as well. And so that's there. Okay. Any questions so far? I'll launch on police culture. We're doing real good. Okay. You all seen the movie RoboCop, or at least heard of it. It's a lot of years back, but the police officer was damaged very badly in some sort of an accident, so got a lot of microchips and mechanical things that made him a perfect, incredible cop. Can go faster than anybody, shoots straighter, has these great eyes that have little increments in them. It's a sort of a fantasy romp around a perfect, wonderful, extraordinary superhero kind of cop. Well, we might like that. We'd love to be able to have the bad guys underneath somebody like a RoboCop. But how would you like to have a robotic cop? How about if we had 20 of these guys, these things, rolling out of the police station every day and night, never needing to stop, never having a break, always able to identify controlled substances from 40 feet away, able to catch up with a speeding car and stop the car and take everybody out and handcuff them and identify controlled substances on them and make sure that everybody is doing everything right. You cross the street in the wrong place, they're right there. Would you like a world like that? Time for an answer.
No.
Well, it's perfect law enforcement. What's the matter with that, right? What would you object to?
It's also no compassion or assessing anything except that everything would be concretely black or white. There is no gray, and there's
Marianne,
sometimes
your mic is off. If you're talking, yeah. I like your mic off sometimes, but there you
yeah. Okay, are we back?
I hear you, Carla. Yeah.
I just think that, like she said, no compassion, no sensitivity, but not only that, I would be concerned about computer breakdown.
Yeah, well, that's you. Marianne, I was hearing you. There was a sort of a visual break, and I thought you were talking and not you being heard. You're all right.
Okay.
Let's thank you. There is something more to police officer work and law enforcement than busting everybody who's doing something wrong. That's not their point. It's sort of like God. He is not arresting us every time we take 1 inch off the main course that we're supposed to be on. He's trying to get us home. So real human beings make better cops than robots because of the human elements involved. They do have, as you said, compassion. They can use judgment. What seems fair here? What is good or what's not good? They can bear humility. I see the cops in the most horrendous situations using humble language, trying to defuse a hot situation, and that gets compliance a lot more easily than hot words and anger. They confer respect and ask for respect in turn, and that raises the dignity of the human situation. A machine can't do that. The police can do that. They are very different than a machine. Now, the machines are performing many tasks today that used to be done in person. It just happened that we arrested the person who most likely burnt the Bidwell Mansion down
Oh,
because of
wow.
all the videos that were taken of him on these little video cameras everywhere in town. And they tracked him the whole way from one place through the starting of the fire to elsewhere. They had him nailed. We're kind of happy about that. I hated the fact that building got burnt down. That was just a
Absolutely.
tragic thing. It's all our history and it's just gone. So thanks a lot, guy, but we needed to have that guy arrested. So some of these mechanical, automatic, robotic things are good, but if we lived in a world where everything's like that, if it was like China right now, where everybody's facial recognition is on the huge computerized system that's watching where you go and approving or disapproving what you do, I don't want a world like that. You know you all know the word cop is a slang word reference to police officers, but it's not a bad word. Cop doesn't mean bad. When Jimmy Cagney says copper, he's trying to say something bad, but he's just adding to the word cop, which means constable on patrol.
Oh,
It used to be a constable would have several city blocks, and that was his beat. He wasn't in a car, he was on foot. He'd walk up and down. He knew every shop window, every door that should be locked at a certain time, the people who were living in there, the people who should be there and should not be there. They had personal touch with the people that they went and saw, and it was a very important relationship between the law enforcement, Bobby, and the population. So a cop was a constable on patrol. For only human beings inspire confidence in the law. Only human beings make law friendly to people. We're better served because of the officer's humanity, his or her sensitivity, intangible and fragile, spiritual, mental, emotional aspects of being a real human person makes them great law enforcement officers, but it also makes them vulnerable. They are not machines. They use body armor, mental armor, a very heavy equipment built, guns, tasers, have intense training to do the physical things that they're doing. They have a well-equipped, expensive patrol car with advanced communications techniques, the police demeanor and the code of honor, and they wear proudly the authority of law. They've got all this going for them, but inside of all that, they're still human. And what makes them valuable, because of that humanity we've been speaking about, also makes them vulnerable. And it makes them mortal. What we call a line of duty death in police is a very important statistic. It's kept every year. It's kept up to the minute, literally. I don't have this slide brought up to 2024 standards yet, but I could do that in a couple of minutes because you can go online and find this information immediate. That was a high year. The one in your documents that I've sent you is up to date. I just have to update this slide. There are usually about 150, give or take, law enforcement line of duty deaths a year in the country. About half or so, that goes up and down, are accidental. In other words, not due to a personal assault on the officers. About half of them. Half of them are from felonious assault or bad action on the part of somebody in the public against the cops. Very often, in fact, ever since 9/11, we've been tracking the 9/11 deaths. There's cancers and other illnesses that have been connected to the Twin Towers, particularly. There were a lot of cops who were called into that emergency, and they inhaled the dust of those collapsing buildings. And for all those years since then, there have been multiple deaths associated with that. Well, that was a crime that was being committed, and they were responding to it in the field in live action. And even if it's 20 years after the fact, or 25 years now, they're still dying from 9/11, and we add those to the 9/11 deaths. COVID-19 took a lot of officers out a couple of years ago. Now we're down to a more reasonable number. But with 150 or 200 or 300 deaths a year, suicides of currently serving officers are impossible to report because they are not reported typically, or they're underreported. It's a shame to the cops. They don't want to see suicide deaths as a kept public number. So it's hard to get it. But there are estimates of up to 3 times as many suicide deaths as there are line of duty deaths. They are associated with policing, but they're not on duty. And it's a horrible shame. I know of one officer who was a friend of mine who killed himself after his retirement.
Oh my God.
He couldn't handle it.
Yep.
Very sad situation.
Yep.
But officers do die. Police work causes very high numbers of divorces. It's been seen to be the second most divorce-ridden profession after, I believe, truck driving and rock and roll star.
Oh,
But
wow.
truck driving is bad on divorce. Early end of careers due to misconduct. They act out badly, and so they're called on the carpet and they're drummed out. It happens more often than cops than other professions. There has historically been a high degree of alcoholism. I think I see a diminishing of this effect, and I hope that's true. I think they're training for not getting into this alcohol solves the problems mentality that was the traditional cop response. They even had a situation where they would go drinking after work every day, and they called it choir practice because they didn't want it to sound too unseemly, but it was to de-stress after a very stressful day and a stressful profession. Drug abuse similarly can be a problem, especially pain medicine, excuse me. Psychological disorders, emotional disorder and distress, PTSD. Cops all have PTSD
Wow.
at certain degrees, and can have diseases caused by the high stress occupations. And so there had been traditionally high death statistics. I think these are also getting better, but at one point a cop would retire at the age of 50 after serving 30 years and on the average be dead in 5 years, just because they were worn out. And
Oh my
it wasn't
goodness.
fair. It's better than that now, but understand that law enforcement's still a tough business. And so they go through it. We asked a lot of them, and that's too bad. Now, what happens? This is a class of trainees. Police are selected from the top 3% of our population, judging from the elements that we want in cops. They're superior in many ways. So how does it happen that these great people become subject to the devastation that we've recorded? How altruism can turn to cynicism. Altruism means the desire to make a change for the better. I want to have a good effect on the world. That's something that we all ought to be aiming for. Only the top 3% qualify for law enforcement, and they all have that altruistic outlook towards making the land better, getting bad people off the streets, getting good people safe. But the continuous aggressive environment and the realities of police life can damage the person and change him or her. Half of the new cops do not last 10 years in the profession. And becoming cynical and cut off, they can become dangerous. Now, the extremes of the occupation are a great part of this effect. There is an effect called a psychological autopsy. Let's say you come across a person lying on the ground. You don't know what's the story, but you just discovered this person lying on the ground. What do? You check for life signs. You find no pulse, you find no breathing. This person is evidently dead. And you start doing a list of things. What's happened here? Is there blood? Is there sign of injury? Is there a bullet hole? You start looking at things, and you're a cop and you're trying to find out what's the story of this. You also do a cause of death. Is it natural? Is it accidental? Is it suicide? Or is it homicide? How much of this was the victim's own fault? In other words, were they running out in traffic and ran in front of a truck, Or are there needle tracks all over them? How much was this? And they have to do this assessment. The cops are not sitting there being judgmental. They've got to know what happened, whether it plays well or not well with the victim. What is their age, their sex, their race? It's all important to have that down. As I said, tattoos are needle tracks there. What's the color of the hair, the eyes, the clothing? What's an evidence of their lifestyle and their general health conditions, their characteristics? And after you put all this together, you have to necessarily create a sense of the innocence or guilt. If it's a 4-year-old little girl who is dead here on the sidewalk, she didn't do this to herself. Somebody killed her. And she is innocent. Or this is somebody who's obviously lived a lot of bad choices out and seems to be a victim of his or her own bad choices. They take on a lot of guilt for their own demise, and you look at them differently than the little girl. You have to. You've got to understand what happened here, and there's a sliding scale that goes across from one side to the other as to innocence or guilt, and you imply or invoke a value with that. There's a value of this death. You can't help that. That happens. A complete innocent child is given a high value. Some person in very poor health who just lived a big life but just died of a heart attack here. We see that as sad, but it's not terribly tragic. Everybody dies, and everybody dying of an old age and a natural illness. We don't say, oh my God, something has to be done about it. And nothing has to be done here. This is normal. Or somebody who died by his own hand, or because he was doing something dangerous and bad. We may put a very low value on this death because of that situation. They create that. Well, the value of the victim's situation has different effects on our mental capacity. We transfer the value and the images that are there, particularly, as I say, an innocent death of a young person we remember that. You get the image of that person in your head, and they lodge somewhere in this framework of our memory, and they hold that value in that place. It can create after effect when an officer has seen the death of a 3-year-old child, or I attended the death of an 11-year-old girl who burnt up in her house
Oh
here
my
in Chico,
gosh.
and an officer was standing by over her body with a cloth over the body to hide it from the media, but he had to stand by and guard her. Well, that's going to have an effect on him, and if he has an 11-year-old daughter someday, they suddenly she'll remind him of this girl he saw dead, and without trying for it, he can have an impact with this, and that hurts them. The cops have dozens of these memories, and they affect them. It's something we need to know about. Another force upon their lives that causes this degrading from the original altruism is a sense of a lack of accomplishment. Recidivism is a word that means somebody previously incarcerated returns to crime. If they return to crime, then the whole punishment and changing of the person that is the attempt of a prison, it has failed. They're going right back to prison. 80% of all cases of felons return to crime after they were released. So they've gone. So Carly, you're going to have to go to your appointment. That's
Thank
understood.
you. Thank you.
I'll send you the link on this, and dial back in when you're done, if you can. Okay. AB 109 was a very controversial law that was passed into being in California. Except the most violent criminals, guys in jail don't remain in prison or jail, but return to the streets in a short amount of time. They just turn them right around and let them back out again because they don't want to have people locked up. Looks bad, but that doesn't help the public very much if you're having a crime spree and you haven't got people locked up. The recent California determination that smashing and grabbing things from a retail store that are worth less than $1,000 will not get you arrested or processed at all. You walk away is very you can imagine cops saying, I can't enforce the law because if I don't have a significant enough loss from this realtor or this retail outfit, I can't arrest, and I might even be called on the carpet for making an arrest on a person who's stealing. That's pretty hard to take. What is the futility of your office? What am I doing any good at all here? Do I have any positive effect on this world around us? Another problem can be there's no closure. I can arrest somebody and fill out the evidence and the paperwork, and it goes into the system, and then I go on to the next case. I don't hear another word about it. I may have to be called into court to testify and then go back out in the field. I don't hear the result. I don't hear where the guy went. I might have to look into it. I may never find out if it had any effect at all. There's no closure. There's no outcome or no positive outcome. Crime continues. People kept getting hurt. The jail door is a screen door, and I just don't see why I'm in this business because it doesn't seem to have an effect. Now that can be really, really hard on cops. Okay, I have got a change here. I'm going to stop sharing, and I hope this works, but I wrote a song, okay? I'm going to get rid of that. I wrote a song for cops about, 10, 12 years ago, and on a dare. Now, make sure your volume is up high, and I hope it works out well, but let's see if we can do this. share this one. Excuse me, that was wrong.
Out to see what he can do and try to make a better world, a nicer place to live in. Underneath his Kevlar vest, he is human like all the rest. A heart is beating in his chest that says he just won't give in. But his heart is taking wounds, expects won't heal soon. His family just doesn't know. Can't afford to let it show. Blessed are those who make peace. The armored knights we call police. They're putting all their lives at risk, knowing that our world is so flawed. He's persecuted for doing right, faces evil every night, yet in heaven's highest court he is called the child of God. Are we winning in this war? What are we out here fighting for? The ideal is not the real. I sought in this my calling. Less of us and more of them. A thin blue line is all I am. And I can't help this feeling that I'm falling. His heart is taking wounds he expects won't heal soon. His family just doesn't know. He can't afford to let it show. Blessed are those who make peace. The armored knights we call police. They're putting all their lives at risk, knowing that our world is so flawed. He's persecuted for doing right, faces evil each and every night. Yet in heaven's highest court he is called the child of God. Down his gun, long time since this was any fun. For one last time removes his badge, the end watches now. This brightness is blinding my eyes, midway between fear and surprise. I don't think I belong up here, I will be disallowed. Sure he's forfeit paradise. Real goodness hasn't paralyzed. He's sworn and cried and leveled blows. He's certain that all this God knows. Often hated while on earth, shots fired a woman giving birth. Her senseless killing, the drugs, the booze. The memories still cast their spell. And now a voice calls out his name, says, son, you have no cause for shame. Walk a beat on Heaven's Street. You've done your time in hell. Blessed are you who make peace. You armored knights we call police. You put your very lives at risk, knowing that our world is so flawed. Persecuted for doing right, face evil every day and night. Yet in heaven's highest court, you are called the child of God.
There that is. Okay. I don't know if you could all hear it, if it worked. Good. Okay, super. I let's see a second here. Let me get back here. I wrote that song. Actually, I'm sitting in my office, and I was in the office when I wrote it. And when I finished the lyrics, I cried. I went, wow, that was something. That got me. So that was kind of wonderful. Now I gotta get my original set of slides back to the place where we are. There we are. Slideshow. Current slide. Okay. Now, get rid of that. There we are. Okay. Listen, if everybody needs a break, let me give you just 3 or 4 minutes and take a morning break, if you know what I'm saying. And I'll pause the record and we'll come right back to this, okay? All right, thank you. I'm going to resume the deal, get back online with the share. We're there. Okay, back again. All right, we were talking about the lack of accomplishment, and we went on to the song that you liked. I was 14, 15, about 12 or 13 years ago. I was asked to do that for a prayer event we were doing for law enforcement here, and that song just came together for me. It literally was the class we're currently in reduced to song lyrics. So I thought it was appropriate to use at this point. Okay, finally in this first class, these are similarities which you would never expect to be between law enforcement officers and ministers of the church. Why would we have any overlap at all? We'd like a Venn diagram with no overlap, right? So not true. Because we both uphold laws and values and truths that are decaying around us rapidly. We stand there as purveyors of something valuable that the society seems to walk away from. Both of us are expected to be strong pillars of our communities, and then at the same time are often ridiculed instead of revered in that stance that we take. The people that need our help often mock us when we're trying to help them. That's familiar with our profession as well as theirs. Too often we're called too late to bring a positive closure. They wait until the thing is a completely crashing disaster, a train wreck, and say, okay, come fix this. And there's nothing much to do but mop it up. The communities we both serve seldom listen to our advice. I think we can all put our thumbs up with that one too. And we're never off duty. We may take the uniform off, but we still represent and live the role that we're living in. And so we can't divest ourselves of that. The community treats us as though we represent every bad minister or priest or law enforcement officer. So after the George Floyd death, every cop in the country was suddenly Officer Chauvin of the Minneapolis Police Department, and so every cop was a bad guy who kneels on the neck and strangles a guy to death, which actually wasn't what happened. But every time a priest is identified as a child molester, we all suffer from that, and ministry is a suspect of all being as bad as the worst of us. We're both called upon to do things that nobody else wants to do. Both law enforcement and clergy pay high emotional dues to fulfill our charges. It asks a lot of us personally. And people lie to us, but then they expect us to always tell the truth. And when we don't tell the truth, they bust us on it. People have no clue what officers or clergy really do on a daily basis, yet they can stand and strongly criticize every step we take. There are, I don't know if it's still the case, there's a few years back, every time an officer stopped anybody at all under any circumstance, there were half a dozen people out there with their cell phones taking video recording of everything that he or she did. That caused the cops to go out with their own body cams to be able to record literally what was happening in front of them and what the people who were being detained were saying and doing, so that they had evidence to support what they would do. People are always telling us why the laws or the rules may be so, but don't apply to me. That's true of people in the church world as well as the public. We struggle against a them versus us mentality. We have many acquaintances, but few friends. We both encourage and support others when we ourselves are so desperately in need of our encouragement and support. The highs are very high and the lows are quite low. We're frustrated not being able to help everyone. We watch those we helped return to their previous choices and continue to degrade. No matter what we do, we will always lose some, maybe most. We feel that we are the only ones who care about right and wrong. So those are common things with cops and with clergy. In similarity and differentiation, clergy focus on spirit, ignoring other parts of life sometimes, because we have our job and the others have the other jobs. I'm not a doctor. But officers deal with the physical and the mental, the behavioral stuff, often refusing to believe that spiritual healing is also necessary. So we compartmentalize and we have a portion to do and a portion that's not to do. So we can feel a lot of commonality, common ground with officers, because we're literally in the same business in many real respects. And so we go into it with that understanding, and we can be very helpful. For our officers, we need each other. I need them as well as they need us. Your officer needs his or her own family. An officer without a family is a ticking time bomb. Every healthy relationship outside the police department keeps our officers grounded in real life and gives them a perspective that it's better for them than the constant negatives of their profession. They're never called to a birthday party unless the cake blew up and hurt people. They're only called out to bad stuff. Somebody's bleeding. If it bleeds, it leads. So they are very good at dealing with tragedies, but they're not called to help celebrate something happy. So that's a negative thing. Love is the answer. It's also imperative that you understand what's going on with your loved one. I didn't mention this, and I've taken these slides down from a much longer presentation probably than need to be. But when an officer drives through a neighborhood that he or she has patrolled for many years, as opposed to, say, Joe Schmo the contractor. Joe Schmo the contractor drives through a neighborhood and says, I built the extension on that house, and I put up that porch, and I helped trim that tree, and I hung Christmas lights on that house for the old lady who lived there. Cops run through and say, I arrested a rapist over here. I stopped a domestic violence situation in here. That drug dealer we caught over there, who later blew his own brains out, good riddance. Their association with places in the city where they live and patrol are almost all negative. And those impact them. They're literally driving around in this war zone with old battles fought in their minds right in front of them. And I can relate to that because I've been out on a few of those kinds of calls, and I know the neighborhoods where we were called into and what I saw. An awful lot of places you get called into inside the house are in squalor. You don't live like that, and most of us live that way. But you'll go into houses where just somebody died. There's no crime going on here. But every surface is covered with trash and prescription bottles and empty beer cans and pizza boxes. and there's no place to set down a pencil. And you just go, wow, people are giving up in this household. Okay, and you see that you can't help it. You see that kind of thing, and it changes your view of people, and it's something you gotta put a watch on yourself. Okay, I am open to questions. Anything you want to know or say about one of this?
I have a quick question. When we go into a death notification with the officers, is the officer the one that addresses that to the individuals that are involved with family, and or is that the chaplain's responsibility?
That's the final class today. We're going to detail death notification, very important, specific job. So yes, I will
Okay.
answer.
Yeah, but I'm not, may not be at the last class depending on how long my meeting is with my endocrinologist.
This is okay.
And it was one way in Siskiyou County, and I want to be sure that I'm appropriate in Butte County.
We ask the officer before we go in. We
Okay.
say, do you want to give the one sentence death notice, because it's a specific thing? We will have more information than they do, because we'll generally call back to the reporting agency and say, give me all that you got on this situation, so I don't go in here half informed. And the cops don't do that, so we end up we call back to, Siskiyou County and say, tell me the death of Joe Blow. What's the story? When was he found? Ask questions and get it all written down, so that when we go out with the officer, we are the informed party.
Okay.
But we leave it to the officer and say, would you like to say the deadly sentence, or do you want me to say it? Either way it goes, it's okay with me. But you kind of debrief them on what you've learned, and then they can be helpful. Or else they'll just say, you do it, Chaplain. Or yeah, I'll handle that. It'll go either way.
Okay. Thanks, Peter.
It's not a rule. But the rule is ask the cop and talk about it beforehand. Rehearse a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's important to go in there, and as I will say in our training, we don't go in there and apologize for being there and say, I'm sorry. Don't say, I'm sorry. You didn't do this. They died on not on your turf, I need to give you some information. You are so-and-so, and you have a son, 32 years old, lives in Ventura. Is that correct? His name is John Smith. Yes. Well, I need to tell you that he was involved in a single car rollover accident early this morning, and he died. You gotta put a quick, informative sentence together that unloads the whole thing. So I'll give you that sort of ahead of the class, but that's if you're going to be gone. Yeah.
Maybe.
Detail it later. Yeah, later. We'll get it in. But yeah, we don't have a protocol per se, but it's good to have that kind of idea that we come in with a sentence that sums the situation up, and it doesn't have an apology nor soft words. It has to hard hit the individual with the exact truth, so that they aren't looking for other ways out of it. Not, your son was involved in an accident. The emergency personnel were responding. They did resuscitation attempts at the site, and they transported to the hospital, and they were checked into the ER, yada, yada, yada. Well, you've just given them too much rope, and now they're going to try to negotiate their way out of that. Well, how is he? No, I'm trying to tell you he died. No, but did he survive? No, you're not listening. You got to get there to dead before they are able to close the door on it and try to go somewhere else. So that's in brief what we did. And thank you for asking. Alrighty. We got our little break a moment ago, so we can go right into class number 2. Class number 2 is very brief, only because it's brief, but because it's boring. I shouldn't say that, but it is. I really shouldn't say that, but it's ethics, and we have to have this. Okay, I'm ready for that. Now I do the share, do the deal, share the deal. Here it is. And this should be big. Full screen. There we are.
Peter, I just got a
Good.
message from Oregon. It looks like they bumped me to 11:50, so I'll be with you longer than I thought.
All right. Good. Okay. Super. Good to have you with us. All right. Ethics and our chaplain philosophy. This is our class number 2 for this 2025 training. I'm just saying that for the sake of our recorded audience. I mentioned in the first class the ICPC, the International Conference of Police Chaplains. There are some other national organizations of police chaplains. This is the largest as far as I know. And then there are individual police departments that have their own chaplaincy program and their own training, like the LAPD, obviously a huge police organization that has chaplains, but they train their own. They may have professional police chaplains. We're volunteer chaplains, and so it's nice to have this covering of multiple chaplains over the country who establish a standard of behaviors in the field and an ethics that we should follow assiduously as much as possible. I've been to several national trainings that have been very helpful to me and very interesting. I'll talk a little bit about that when it's applicable. So I'm just going to kind of bullet point the stuff that's in here. You read the handout that I gave you, and it'll flesh all of this in. But pastoral care is offered to all, regardless of faith, gender, sexual orientation, national origin, creed, or religion. I think you would assume that that's the case, and that is the truth. We're called into situations that can demoralize our officers. We talked about it, emotional, mental, and spiritual burden on law enforcement. And the officer's family, I can mention that, suffer along with their officers, especially when things have taken their officer and put him in a psychological space that's difficult to deal with. It takes specialized guidance, counseling, and assistance needed sometimes beyond our realm of expertise to help our officers. But we bring special interest in training, pastoral care. We are offered to all people without cost or any of the taint of proselytizing to our own way of thinking. Our ministry provides a source of strength, and other clergy are not equipped for dealing with officers' lives. They may think so. We are in the workplace of the officers themselves and provide empathy and experience. I think one of the most important things about the chaplaincy is that we are out in the public. We're in our own public world. We have our own church life, and our own community. But we choose voluntarily to go inside the police department, to come inside the locked doors and security, and dwell among guys in uniforms and show them approval. That's not what they're getting from the rest of the world. They go out and find that they're hated. One of the things about cops that's interesting is how they look at fire department. Fire department is America's heroes. They show up and everybody cheers. You're here to save our building. You're here to save lives. You're here to put paddles on Aunt Jenny, who had a heart attack. Look at these guys. They're so good and they're so nice. The cops show up, and half the crowd is out there with cell phones trying to record their mistakes and scream at them and say nasty words about the cops, because the cops are there to arrest people and take them away, they think, is all that's about. And so the cops who don't have these glorious kitchens set up to learn French cooking in their fire station with a 96-inch color television and workout facilities and all of this kind of thing, where they are able to get paid for just sitting around. It's a funny thing to see the way those two services both essential, both important. It's certainly two different kinds of jobs. Look at each other. And the cops look with a little bit of sharp disdain at the firemen who are 80% of the time doing relatively nothing at the station and waiting to be called out. Whereas the cops get to work and they start their day and they're out on the road and they're looking for trouble. They're patrolling, they're waiting to be called out, and they're getting calls, call. Half of the calls these days are homeless crime situations, people being where they shouldn't be and having to be told the rules. So it's just different lifestyle. The core values. Let's see. Did you have something, Marianne? I have.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
If there is something that is beyond how do we encourage officers or others to find someone to help them when it's beyond our purview, beyond what we need to do, what we're supposed to do?
Great.
Is there a pattern to follow there?
There can be, we have to deal in confidentiality or
Right.
Respect privacy a lot of the times. So sometimes we can't go over their head or around them to tell somebody that somebody is in a tough way. It's a judgment call. But I get what you're saying. A lot of what we do doesn't really have high-end trained response parameters. We come with the presence of God and with prayer. That we don't even have to use out loud language, and they feel it. They get that, and ask some questions and see what they can receive. But yeah, if they're obviously in a PTSD situation and about to boil over, we may ask some important questions. How are you feeling? Is it making, it's fair to ask a cop the suicide questions, have you ever thought of harming yourself because of the situation? Now, I've never done that. I haven't been in that situation where I thought that was the case. But if they go, no way, then say, I believe them and they're okay. I know, my wife is a counselor. She's a psychotherapist, and she has had a number of cops as her patients, and has learned through a lot of trauma of theirs that all cops have PTSD, that they're all suffering from certain levels of stress and trauma, because they just see too much bad stuff. It's ugly. But I think just talk therapy, we can talk through the issues of their lives, and although we may not think we're doing any good, we're doing a lot of good just showing them care. I wish we could fix everything, but we can't. But pray for and see if there's an opening to direct them to some help that's up beyond your capacity. And then that's the best I can say for that. Good question. I wish I had a more definite answer, but it's going to be not a one-size-fits-all situation. Right. It's something where we apply. All right. What did I do? Okay. All right. We are available to the needs of the officers and victims of crime. We subject our lives and our office to the scrutiny and accountability to ensure our integrity, and offer professionalism of service, including confidential listening and spiritual counsel. All of us are very proud of our work, hopefully. Often we are so focused on our mission to service to officers that when our work is completed, we just go without telling our story of our work. But we like to have our monthly meetings, and the chaplains coming together is good, not just to brag on it. I was there for 9 hours or something, but the fact of what we do helps ourselves to cycle it out And to have somebody hear you takes half of it away, the pressure or the force of it. Like I say, the 11-year-old girl who burned up in a building was an impacting kind of thing. They had some after effect meetings with the people involved in it, including me, to talk through it and see that you're doing okay. It's important. That's really about the level of our long-term ministry with people, is to stay available and talk about it. And it kind of it takes down ratchets down the negative effect of a lot of those tragedies. The police will often say to us that, "Boy, I wouldn't do the difficult work you do for anything. My job is easy. You guys have the hard work." And it's always amazing to me to hear that. And I just go, "Man, I don't see that. I think you guys are doing such incredible work, and it's every day and it's long hours." They're trained and able to face armed robbers or control an unruly crowd, but a sobbing parent at a SIDS death, and I've been there, can erase even the most stoic officer's composure, or put them into really defensive mode where they're watching themselves because they can't handle it. Entering into the saddest of moments is no easier for a chaplain, but we tend to be around death maybe more than officers would expect. We've buried a lot of people in our ministry, and dealt with the realities of the undertakers and the cold body that feels like clay, and we've been there. It doesn't scare us. And they watch that and they go, "Wow, you know what you're doing around death." Yeah, kind of do, actually. It's sort of more natural for me than Joe Public. As a team, both the chaplain and the officers make a great difference in the lives of the persons touched with a tragedy. We can work together, and you'll find that flows in and out really, really naturally if you let it. We represent a wide variety of religious traditions and levels of professional preparation and endorsement. But when a chaplain for everyone, the chaplain is working in the police world, each is not the religious leader of a particular tradition, serving a particular congregation or service agency. We are theirs in totality. I'm not sure how to phrase that more clearly, but we serve the many personal and spiritual needs of individuals right where they are. I've been to a death where the surviving partner was an atheist and did not want a prayer, which I obeyed out loud, and quietly I said a prayer anyway, to our Lord in silence. The chaplains will respect the persons that they serve, even though there may be great differences in all factors, of course. I think we are all big enough to do that. We will come at any hour, 24 hours a day, in all kinds of weather. If somebody asks, we can pray a prayer offered in guarded privacy to support the trembling of spirit that comes in difficult moments. I prayed over a lot of dead bodies in the field that people asked for, or I asked them if they'd like me to pray over your dad or your son. We'll spend many hours riding as active passengers with officers on patrol duty. That's a really important piece of what we do. It seems passive, and it is to a sense, but our being with them gets them in their world. Then when they need us, they'll call us because they can trust us in the field situations they come to see. Now, the canon of ethics for law enforcement chaplains is a long read, and I'm not going to do it while we're here. I'll just tell you that we stand as examples of God's goodwill and commandments to mankind. We have to walk our talk. We need to watch our language. Try not to match what we hear. We'll hear a lot of F-bombs and S-bombs, and I don't care. We don't act or be shocked at this. And if they apologize, they go, F this or S that. They go, "Oh, I'm sorry, chaplain." You show them, "Hey, I have heard this before, and I'm not shocked at all. Don't watch me. I'm here for you. I'm not here for you to play to me and talk in a way that you think is going to please me. You don't know what pleases me, except to be around with you guys. So our advice to them must be legal, moral, factual, practical, and religiously neutral as much as is possible. Okay. Article 2. In our experience with law enforcement, you will see that officers we serve walk a very fine line in the field, having an observance of many rules, laws, general or codes of conduct and behavior. The code of conduct and behavior of the cops is a binder like that thick. And it's amazing to see what kind of policies that they have to watch for and make sure they obey. We understand that the officers will most often refuse to have you pay for their lunch, coffee, etc., because the code requires them not to accept gratuities from anybody. I know that different law enforcements draw the line hard or soft on this, but the Chico PD has had a history of staying away from allowing officers to accept anything for free from anybody. That makes it imperative for them not to go through In-N-Out Burger. In-N-Out Burger has an internal policy that you cut uniformed officers' bill by half, and you will do this at the cash register. Well, our cops can't accept that, and so what are they going to do? They're going to go to McDonald's. They can't accept a gratuity. The reason for that is that it cannot be apparent that a cop is acting in appreciation or thanks reciprocally for anything that they've received for free, and so the cops can't accept it. One of our officers got dressed down and even lost and demoted because he accepted some pizzas and brought them into dispatch late at night one night. Okay, we utilize proper means. We may feel inclined to break a law or of God or the department for a worthy end. I'm not going to imagine how that may be, but at any rate, we pay strict heed to proper means and discharge of our office, and we don't violate the laws of God and or of the department or of the world we're standing in. I think we understand that. We cooperate with the department and religious officials in the discharge of law enforcement chaplaincy duties. Wearing of the uniform does not ever make us a law unto ourselves, but rather more responsible to higher authorities, be they religious or secular. We are like military chaplains, with a salute to the chief, a prayer to God, and a spirit of service to one and all. As I will say when we get to that, when we're on ride-alongs, we may end up being called out to an accident scene, because officers do, and be suddenly traffic control. We go out there in the uniform, it identifies us, we can stop traffic, we can use some authority to say, no, you will turn left here. You can't come through here. And people will give you a hard time for that, but you can use that authority properly when you've been authorized to control the traffic on the street during an accident cleanup. So I think that's an interesting thing. I've done that a few times. Okay. Now, our conduct toward community, the manner in which we treat the community when in police uniform or not, reflects upon our department, our church, and upon God himself. We have no public life of our own. As I said, we can be in or out of uniform, but we're never off the job. And at the same time, we are religiously neutral so that we can minister to someone of another faith in a manner that is sensitive and appropriate, knowing that the minister of that person's faith can do it better at a later time. If we're called to a death of, let's say, a Hindu, we may go in there and tread softly, do the normal human things. We're in America and we can all speak English. But if it gets to be a religious situation, we may ask the person there, is there something you would like me to do in faith? I'd be more comfortable if your own minister is here to do the right thing by the death of your loved one. But if you have something for me to do, tell me what it is. I'll follow through. And then we follow suit with what they do. Professional conduct of law enforcement chaplains. We have an entire unit on confidentiality, which we'll do, but suffice it to say that your conversations and experiences with officers are all at least somewhat confidential. And the more you talk about the officers, the less confidence they will put you in time of need. So we don't carry stories out of the field and tell everybody that Officer so-and-so said this. The acceptance by the departments toward the chaplaincy has been established on the basis of the confidence that we will not violate an officer's private world. This has some important exceptions, but we'll talk about that when we get to there. Okay. Ecumenicism. We have a great breadth of faith represented at the Chico Police Chaplains Association, and that is our strength. We learn from each other how to minister to others who are not in our ways of our own churches. We need to find out how to subject our ministry, how the subject of our ministry expects to receive our ministry, not lay out our own familiar methods. I kind of mentioned that in the death of a Hindu. We don't know how to do this, so we're going to do this as well as we can. Sometimes it's just being a good human being. And we talked about receiving of gifts. We may receive gifts as from friends or complimentary coffee when it's appropriate. We can do that. If the cops want to buy you a cup of coffee, be very thankful and accept it, because they appreciate you being there in the right seat with them. We will not receive personal gifts from the public as a police chaplain. We're representing the police department and their policy not to be given gifts. Excuse me. And we have a professional attitude. We have a proud and holy heritage. We should respect each other and ourselves in this office. This is a great opportunity for doing good. Think of this. I mean, we're in our church's world, our church world, our congregation, and maybe the people that know of our church. That's a certain sphere of opportunity. Here is somebody who touches the whole city, and we get to go inside their offices, and among them, they're underserved by churches because they work weird hours and they can't go to church much, or they feel like if they go to church, they're going to run into somebody they arrested. So they're kind of insulated from the church world. But if the church comes in there and the person of us and is loving them and showing them we love you and appreciate you, it's incredible. It has a great effect of good for them. It takes, likewise, only a moment to ruin it for everyone. So protect the chaplaincy by your proper actions, attitudes, and words, and know that they are extremely valuable to these cops. You think you're doing nothing, but the God person comes into them showing appreciation. It's huge. Okay, I just rattled that off pretty quickly. Did any question come up for any of you at this point? Okay, you'll read that ethics thing. It's not long, but it's good to get to know it. It's my responsibility to let you know that. But there's that. Okay, I will change out. Okay. I'm done with that one. Let me go back to this and knock that off. All right. Does anybody need a brief break before we head into this last one? This is an important class. Okay, that's fine. Let's see.
Peter, I'll be checking out at 11, probably 40.
Good. You'll get most of this then.
Good.
That's great. All right. Let me go here. There we are. We're sharing. Okay. And I'm going to make this big. There we are. Okay, class 3. We're managing to get 3 in a morning, and that's remarkable. Take due note of this, because this is direct instruction on how we do things in the field. And one of the important ways in which we do get called out when we're not on duty, we're maybe on call, but we're not out among them, we're not riding with them, we just happen to be in our office and we get the phone call. And then you'll see how this proceeds. So, death is inevitable, but we never do seem ready. Death is frightening to hear, but who tells it makes all the difference, and that's us. Why is this so hard to do? Now, all our police officers, this may surprise you, but all our officers will tell the chaplains that death notifications are their least favorite duty, as they only bring sorrow and they don't have anything much to offer once the bad news has been delivered. Also, cops don't get trained for this. They haven't got trained for this. They get trained to arrest people. They're not trained to go in and tell somebody their son is dead. They don't have tools for this. Their gun belt doesn't do anything at all for them. They've got to go in there and make somebody's worst day ever and then leave. It's hard on them, and they say, I don't like doing death notifications at all. I need your help. So they do really appreciate us coming along with and providing the service that we do. So it's important to do. We can do hard things. Okay, as a chaplain, when we are given the task of delivering a death notification, we're hounded powerful information giving to people in an extreme situation. The sheer force of the message we will deliver is going to change someone's life forever. We must not fear death notifications, but we must regard the event with reverence, humility, and respect. It's not something you want to have happen for you. I don't want a cop and a chaplain showing up at my front door. Okay. So how to start, what to know, how to proceed. All right, the call comes to you. As I said, you're just out in your life. You just get a call. It's 2 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon. Dispatch calls the chaplain with a request to make a death notification. Your first duty to do is to go to the station. That's not always the case. If there's a death in the home, you may go directly to that home. But a death notification, you got to come into the station and come into dispatch. Find the police dispatcher and go there where the station is, where he or she obtains a telex or a printed out transmission from the issuing department. Most often it's going to be from another county, because if they're close in, the local relative will know about the situation. But this is something that's been ferreted out from some distant place, a different county, a different state in the Union. And that state or county is asking the Chico PD to locate this individual and to notify them of the death of their close relation. The form that you'll read contains, it's hard to read sometimes because it's scattered all over the page. It's one of these computer-generated forms that's not helpful. But it will have the names of the deceased party, the kin that is expected to be kin to be notified with an address and a telephone number. Okay, so that's fair enough. You got who you got to tell. From there, you'll also have the name and phone number of the officer requesting the notification. So you can call that agency and say, I'm Chaplain Peter Hansen with the Chico Police Department, Chico, California. I'm calling for Officer Smith, who's asked me to do a death notification here in Chico. Can I speak to that officer now? And so far, I've always said yes, they've been there. So they come on the line, they're happy to talk to you. So never expect any of this as an imposition. I'm just calling to get as much information on the death of Joe Blokes. You've asked for a death notification here. What happened? Because that telex doesn't say much. It'll be, vehicular accident, Highway 99 in Bakersfield. Well, that's helpful, but you need more on it because people are going to want to know. They want to know exactly what is known about the death of their loved one. So calling that information to that officer is important. We want the thing that reporters go for: who, where, when, why, and how. Obtain all the information that's possible. They'll usually have a pretty good way of breaking it down and telling what they know, but ask questions if it's not clear to you. And before you ask questions, before you break off contact with your source, make sure you have a clear identification of the victim and the person being notified. The disposition of the body: where is the body being held right now? And is there a phone number at that place? It's the county morgue, it's a funeral home, or just call back the same officer and get the disposition from him or her when they call in. So they have somewhere to go when you've dropped the bomb and you left, and they got somewhere to get information further. The disposition of the body, making funeral preparations, is going to be on their plate. So they need to know where to go from there. They're cut off from this event. So you make sure you know the ID, and the primary persons to notify are usually a spouse or closest blood relative. Sometimes it's pretty stretched and not even very important to somebody to hear about it, but they're doing their best to find someone to notify so that that person's life does not go unnotified. Now, some more things to consider. Plan to spend 1 or more hours with this party. You may take your own car and stay after the officer leaves, possibly, or ride with the officer. I kind of do recommend that, riding with the officer. If you leave your car back at the department, you can later get a ride from an officer if you have to stay past when the officer has to get out. But you'll confer with this officer. That's why being in the car with them is important, because you're going to plan the notification. You're going to tell him or her what you intend to do, what you want them to do. As I said, ask them, do you want to make the deadly sentence, or do you want me? Because it needs to be done in a single sentence ending with the word dead or death, so that we don't have negotiation with the facts. And I'm happy to let you do it, and then I'll answer all questions that go into my sheet, or whatever you want to do. I'm here to support you. So as I said, the officers are not trained in this at all. They're really comfortable to pass it off, or they may want to do the initial thing. You wear your uniform into this situation. You might, if you wish, wear body armor. That's an option. I do ask all my chaplains to wear body armor when they're in the field in general, because you don't know what comes up. But a death notification is a different situation. You're not going to get shot, I hope. It's never happened, so may it never happen again. You may need to see that there's a medical stability question. Maybe somebody has a bad heart or something. You might need to help that situation, but that's rare. If the person may be so shocked by the death notice that medical treatment may be required, dispatch may need to make arrangements to have fire department medical personnel on hand. That's what they're for. Get them off the television and out of the wolf stove and get them down to help you. You formulate a plan of action, and you do this before you arrive. Never make notifications by telephone. I'll say that again later. You don't do this by phone. It's got to be in person, face to face. Okay. It's a two-person detail, you and the officer, 1 or 2 cars parking in front or near the front. You don't make it look like it's an arrest situation, so parking down the street a little bit might be better than parking in the driveway. You don't want to hurt people or shock them. This is hard enough to do. The hour, of course, doesn't make a difference. What hour it is, just do it. The most difficult hour related situation I've found is during work time, and we don't know where they work. We've got a house address for them, but they're gone. It's 4 in the afternoon, they're not home. And you may have to leave a note and say, call us back, and we have something we need to discuss. Don't tell them what it's about in the note. You just have them call you back. Of course, no lights or sirens. This is not that kind of a code 3. So ideally, you can get them at home and bring them to the door and be a chaplain and officer standing there, and then you're there. So at the entry, you knock or ring and have the officer introduce him or herself, and then introduce you, and then get inside the house. Ask to be let inside. Can we come in? If they allow you, then you go on in. They don't have to allow you to go on in. There's no warrant. Assess the conditions quickly. Try not to answer their questions. They're going to say, what is this about? Assure them, we're going to tell you this in a moment. We have a couple things we've got to do. Can we go into the living room, a soft room, a living room, family room with soft chairs or sofas? Soft because they may stand up and fall down. We don't want them injured. Have them seated, hopefully a little below you. You want to sit down too, but not be in an inferior position so you can get up and help them if that's the situation you need. Ask if there's anyone else in the house and have them join you there in that scene so it's all done at once. Because the situation is, if you tell somebody and they go, oh, no, no, and they start screaming, and some big uninformed guy is in the back of the house, thinks the officers are hurting mom, and come running out and trying to defend her, it's a misunderstanding, and you don't want that to happen. Everybody above elementary school grade age should come and receive this information at the same time. If they're elementary school, you say, stay in your room, honey, I'll let you know what's going on later. Also, if there is a pet loose, particularly a dog, have them put outside or in a bathroom. You don't need the dog going crazy on you because they think you just killed mom. So everyone in the house at the same time gets the same message all at once, except the dog and the littlest kids. Okay. Questions so far? Okay. Be very direct. Tell it in using direct words. Dead or killed is part of the sentence. You don't start by saying, we're sorry, or that we have some bad news for you. They'll already be putting up defense, trying to fend it off. As an example, you're John Jones. Do you have a son by the name of Edward Philip Jones, residing in Livermore with a birth date of May 25th, 1967? Yes. Your son Edward Jones was in a car accident this afternoon that resulted in his death. You don't say it that fast, but you say with that directness and clearness. It is not kind to mince words here, or to put soft words like passing away, or he didn't make it. Didn't make what? You got to get to dead or death or killed, because the message has got to get in before they start defending against it. That's a favor to them, not mean. So what next? You've done the big job. Expect any type of reaction. The chaplain that we had with us, who used to work for the Kansas City Police Chaplaincy, once went to a gangbanger's home to tell his mother that he'd been gunned down in the street doing some crime. And he said they knocked at the door. He would always come with armed associates because there's a rough neighborhood. Knocked at the door. A woman opened the door this far to the chain being just extended, and they said, can we come in? No. All right. Can I give you some information now? Okay. You're so-and-so, and your son is so-and-so, yes. Well, I have to inform you that he was involved in a criminal exploit this afternoon, and law enforcement shot him and he died. Okay, thank you. Click. That was it. She took the message and shut the door. That's harder on the chaplain, I think, than anybody else, but what are you going to do? Expect any kind of reaction. Or, I really don't know him. He's been out of the family for years. Oh, thank God he's dead. We've been worried about him for so long. It's just a relief to know that so and so is dead. I've had all those. It can happen. So limit your communication just to facts. You don't absolutely don't offer opinions. Okay? Well, maybe it happened like this. No, you don't know. There's no way to soften the initial blow of this reality. The straight message is the message that gets in. Use simple, everyday words. Big words, soft words, vague expressions will only confuse the issue. It's not helpful at all. You avoid jargon such as your daughter was injured fatally, or your mother had a heart attack and was taken by ambulance to the emergency room. They worked on her for over an hour and I'm afraid she didn't make it. Make what? I'm started to see that she's recovered. I can't stand it if you tell me something different. I don't want to hear that. But now they're negotiating with your first facts. You know how that kind of initial trauma thing goes. They negotiate with it and they try to get it away. But if you get it in first, then you're dealing with truth. They will ask questions. And if you don't know the answer, tell them, I'll try to find that out for you. Or an investigation is being made of the incident. Or you can call this number and as information becomes available, they will be happy to tell you. Here is the number of the coroner, and he will tell you all about that. Absolute honesty is not always the best way to handle things, but don't make it up. Don't spin yarns. Tell them what's true, that you know, hopefully it's being fair to them and nice to them, but be direct. It's very important to be straight up. You provide for them empathy, not sympathy. Empathy is not sympathetic. You are a stranger. You don't know what they feel, but you're trying to stand there with them and offer them care and help from where they are. You don't give any false hopes. A grieving person usually does not want sympathy from strangers. You can feel with the person and get on their level, but don't be a know-it-all. Shared feelings may be the most meaningful. I would say probably you watch out for comparisons. You need to get a contact there and say, my dog died once and it was really hard for me. Well, shut up. You don't know what their dog died or whether that has anything helpful at all. In no case should your behavior give the cause for false hope. I've been at a death where this relatively young man who drank himself to death, literally, he was a very hard alcoholic, and he died and lay down and died in the hallway in the apartment. And the two women living there with him walking over his body, having considered that this was kind of normal. He passes out all the time. So they just walked over him, smoking cigarettes. They finally figured it was probably too long. He hadn't gotten up, so they shook him and realized he's cold. So they called the cops in. And the first question they wanted to know of me is, all right, do you think he went to heaven? Here's where honesty may not be the best policy. And truly, we have a loving and forgiving God. Somebody's ultimate disposition to heaven or not is not my department. So rather than say that, or that I'm pretty sure this guy didn't make it, this is a wasted life that I'm looking at. I can't help but see that. But who knows? No. Listen, I'd be happy to pray over him, and we'll have to leave this in God's hands. You know how to couch this so that you're not lying, but you're not presenting a false hope. And they said, oh yeah, please would you go out to so I went out to the ambulance and crawled in with the guy and prayed over his body and asked God's forgiveness, which I truly meant. I hope this guy did not go to hell, but oh by God, he looked like hell. And he was seriously dead. So as you pass through the questions and answers, you give them the information that you got from the coroner or the officers who dealt with the scene, and you've given them as much as they can. You find out, have I reached closure? Are they quieted down? Are they resigned to the truth? It's very important that they speak of the loved one in the past tense. He's such a good boy. He's such a wonderful person. Isn't there yet, but he was so troubled. We were very sorry for him in the past. It starts getting in the past tense. You know that it's gotten in. The pill is in. They know it's a past deal. This person is dead. They've heard the message. We wish we could do a lot more for them. Sometimes there's nothing much we can do other than just be there. And that is a lot more than you know. When you can't improve on silence, this is one of our chaplain's mantras. When you cannot improve on silence, don't. Your presence is very, very important. Your words, not so much. So being there is already doing something. Adding to it by words don't always help. You can ask, should ask, if there's a friend or pastor that they would want to call on that would come and be with them for a while they're getting through this message, this time. Men and women both need comfort of an understanding friend. Do you have a friend who you'd like to have with you? Is there a pastor that you have in your family who would like to come over here and spend some time with you? That you can suggest and help them to notify them. If at all possible, stay until you know they're in a support system. Don't leave them all alone if you can help it. Or there may be 2 or 3 of them there so they can help each other. Are you all right now? Is there anything else that you need from me? They'll be surprised that the chaplain, that the Chico Police Department has chaplains. We've been around for many years, but they don't see us per se. And they'll be amazed. They'll say, I didn't know their police had chaplains. Oh yes, and this is what we're for. And they'll just be blessing you for the fact that you're there for that. You can help them make phone calls to get someone else there to help. As I say, don't leave them alone. Don't just drop the bomb and turn and walk out. Assess the situation. Make sure they're going to be okay. Don't just rush off. The family may have a question or two as soon as the initial shock can be handled. They will let you know that they're handling it. And most of the time, they'll give you a cue that they'd wish to be alone. I'm all right now. Thanks for coming. And then you're done. You can ask, what else can I do? About pastor or priest or relative or children or neighbor. Make contact. Follow up later if that seems to be appropriate. Give the necessary information that I mentioned. Then when you're all done, if you're coming back to the police department, you can go with the cop, and the cop will say, we're 10-8, we're done with this call, and so they'll know. If you're alone, you should call in and say, I'm done with this death notification on Jones Avenue. It's good for the dispatch to know that you're off a particular call. Bye-bye, Tony. You're off the call, so they know you're not there anymore. If they call you, you're going to be on the road or somewhere else. So as I say, closure and recovery begins with the use of the past tense for the deceased. You may give them a business card. We provide business cards through the department. I think still do that. And any other grief support literature you might have. They are going to get through it, but they'll never get over it. So don't say that. You don't get over it. People die, but love never dies. We are there to provide faith. The facts are cruel. The faith is healing. And they'll take as much faith from you as they'll let you. And you just presence adds to that. But as strangers, we can't give sympathy. We can be a wealth of compassion and selfless service, but not sympathy. Follow up. The memorial service might be something they call you to do. I know the very first call out I had for the public was a drowning up in Bear Hole, which is up in Upper Park here. And spent an afternoon recovering the body down in the creek. The memorial service, however, was handled by a chaplain from the Paradise Police Department because they wanted it to do up at his church, and I was so thankful. I was not asked to do this because they played Grateful Dead music through the whole service. You get some weird calls. But a funeral, an anniversary, the occasional call just to talk, there may be something you link up with some of these people that becomes a relationship after the fact. That's fair to do, but it's not required. Okay. Special circumstances. At work, if they're at work and you find out where they do work, you may go to the house and somebody there says, well, he's actually at work and he works down at so-and-so warehouse. Then you get on the line to warehouse and say, let me talk to the boss. And here's the situation. I have a death notification for Joe Jones and I need to get a private room. Is he there today? He is. Okay, well, hold on to him. We're going to be showing up with a marked car and come in and you'll lead him into us and then we'll tell them about it. It's a relative. We need to have this time. He's not in trouble, but it's going to be tough on him. So they'll arrange it. The boss will go get the person. The boss is to say nothing except that there are some people here waiting with some important information for them. They'll already be keyed up about that, but that's nothing you can help. If they're at somebody else's house, you speak to the host or homeowner first, have them again quickly make arrangements for privacy in a soft room, have the host join you. At a hospital, make a notification in a private waiting room or in a bed. I've done it in a bed. Let somebody know who's died. There can be multiple deaths, sometimes a single family discussed. That was something. I had a next door neighbor who was a drunk. I didn't know she was a drunk, but she was borrowing a car from a friend because she'd lost her car due to too many DUIs. She got drunk, traveled down on Highway 149 back when it was a single road instead of a divided highway. She passed a truck in the rain and head-on collision with a family of 4 and killed all 4 and survived. I don't know who went to make a death notification of the family of 4, but that had to be a big, bad situation. The whole family was wiped out in a single incident. A presumed death situation. The body is unidentified without ID, can be presumed from witnesses and circumstances and contents and keys. The officers may help the family to verify through body marks, tattoos, scars, dental records, etc. We're not much involved with that, but that sometimes happens. A dead body is a dead body, and sometimes they don't know what it is until they go about it. Now, another special situation is suicide. There are things to know about suicide that are unique to suicides. You need to help the survivors understand that they are not guilty. Everybody in a suicide situation starts asking, was it me? Did I fail to do something I should have? There are too many questions left after a suicide, and the questions never get answered. These why questions will never be resolved. This is normal with an abnormal event like suicide. We can share that with the people we inform. A suicide is hard because it leaves questions unanswered, and that's not your fault. You can't help that. A suicide note is not really an explanation or a justification. They are messages. They can be very mean. I haven't really dealt much with messages or suicide notes, but suicides, yeah, quite a few. And the people who have to learn about it need to know in such ways that their reactions can be made normal. A suicide is really the ultimate selfish act, the ultimate rejection of others, of help, of love, of all the rest of us. I know we want to deal with a suicide as an event of a victim, but at the same time, they're not just a victim, they are also the perpetrator. And we got to give somebody the permission to feel that. she not only died, but she was the one who killed her. You can have complicated feelings about it. It's permitted. That's good counsel to give to somebody in this situation. Suicide was not a destiny, it was a choice. And the survivors, or they're not the ones who made the choice, the people you're talking to, didn't make that choice for them. They did it themselves. The survivors will have anger due to the fact that there's no explanation. Suicide can be very embarrassing. What does it say about us? What does it say about our family? We don't like all these official people standing around and talking about my brother doing himself in. It's not your fault is what they must accept, and they will ultimately believe you. You can defuse them. They will feel more in control, which they feel the control that they've lost. But defusing them is talking it through, tell them what you know. Now, they will often ask if they went to heaven or hell. And the old church maxim was, if you kill yourself, you go to hell automatically. I don't buy that. I think it's an illness very often. A mental illness necessarily, but an illness nevertheless. And you don't go to hell for having cancer. You don't go to hell necessarily for having lost your sanity and doing yourself in, thinking that you're helping yourself. But also you can't give false hope. I don't know is the only answer that you can give. I'm sorry, that's not a call that I am able to make about anybody. We just leave that to God. If they don't know the Lord, it's hard. You may offer prayer and they may or may not accept it. You may console them, but don't patronize them. We do not believe in universal salvation. No, everybody goes to heaven. I firmly believe that. You must know that Joey went to heaven. Well, what kind of malarkey is that? There's no religion that teaches that except some silly ones. Suicide is often done in an altered mental state. It's a sickness, and the Lord knows that. More than half of suicides involve drunkenness. Isn't the drunkenness caused it, but it makes it easier to do. Okay. What not to say at a death of another party. Be strong for your children. Stop that. You got to get a hold of yourself. It's nature's way, or it's God's will. Buck up. You're young. You'll make a life for yourself. Time will heal all this. Look around. You're not the only one going through this. I hope you're laughing, because these are ridiculous ministry things, right? You need to stop reliving the past. Only the good die young. These have all been said. You need to count your blessings. Think of your precious memories. God needed him more than you did. You've heard that one. Well, I guess God needed him up there more than he was needed down here. If they say that, don't correct them, but just, oh, that's such bad theology, okay? God doesn't need any of us up there. That's not why we go. He's happy now he's with God. Or I know how you feel. You don't. If there's anything you need, just call. Careful offering that. What you don't know won't hurt you. Okay. You have 2 other children, or you can have more children. It's not over yet. Don't say those things. Grieving. Newton Bracewell is one of our funeral homes here in Chico. I'm sure you know them. Rick Newton was an expert, literally a studied expert on the art and science of grieving. He was a great resource when he was in business. He retired several years ago. But he taught a lot about grieving to our chaplains back when he was in business. It's a natural process. Nobody really gets over the death of a loved one. It's a new feature in the landscape of their lives. But they learn to live with it. They negotiate it. They work new paths around it, neural pathways, with that involved in it. A chaplain is not around long enough to do the long-term work. We are triage. Other ministers will be therapy. We can't do long-term therapy. not as chaplains, unless we create a new relationship with that person. We're there at a crisis point. The essential is that we do no harm and the most good that we can. We make sure they're going to be okay for the next step, whatever that is. Don't be surprised. The chaplain is going to be affected by what he or she communicates, and it will suddenly hit us at times. Some deaths will hit us harder than others. We can talk it over with our fellow chaplains in a briefing. The hardest death notification I had to make was at 2 a.m. with a young man, younger than I by a couple of decades, but his wife and he had adopted the practice of once a month having a boys' night. Welcome back, Carla. I think she's about to come back in. Hello, Carla. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We are just winding up on death notifications. Goodness, we're there. But it's in the recording, and hopefully you'll be able to see it all. Now
Okay, I'm enlarging it.
just about to say that some death notifications will hit us hard. I had to tell a young man that his wife had died in a single car rollover accident into an irrigation canal.
Oh,
She was doing a girls' night out with her friends.
oh
They
no.
did some drinking and gambling, and then she went on to a casino, like at Corning Casino. And then she was driving back on the old 99 and left the roadway and went into a ditch, and her car got underwater and she drowned and she died.
Oh my goodness.
I got to tell this guy this has happened to his wife. Now I have a wife at home,
Of course.
and to think about having somebody come to my house and given this. Now she doesn't go out drinking and gambling
Right.
with girlfriends, so I feel safe about that. But to have somebody come and tell me in my home at 2 a.m. that my wife is dead is
Thank
something
God.
I would never want to have happen.
No.
I'm the carrier of this information. So expect to have some of these hit you hard. Another one of these wife is dead situations happened to a different situation. But the man had a wife who was on drugs, and she'd go off for 3 or 4 days at a time, going with a drug crowd, then coming back home and being ashamed but not changing her life. And then she was gone again. He couldn't expect what would happen, but then the word came through us that she'd been up to Quincy, had been driving the car, went over a snowbank and down a ravine, and she died in the car, and the passenger in the car in the right seat was her drug dealer
Ah,
who survived.
unbelievable.
So it was one of those situations that was very hard to hear, but in a way it ended the suspense of his life, which was that she was always on the edge of dying or killing herself, and now she's done it. So the waiting is over. The sorrow is there, real. We were able to spend some real quality time with this gentleman. He's a good guy. But his wife being dead wasn't a complete surprise.
Oh,
And she was very much involved with the cause of it. So it's again that psychological autopsy with her dying literally at her own hand, but not expecting to do that, was one of those situations where you get complicated feelings.
of course. Did she have children or did they have children?
Yes.
Oh, no.
No, but that one did not. The other
Oh.
one, the rollover, did have children.
Oh.
And I'm sorry they had to hear that their mom was dead. All right, I have just gotten to the end of my slideshow, and here we are back again. So, okay. Carly, you'll watch the rest of the video, and we'll get back here on Thursday morning. If you have any questions regarding the classes today, subsequent to that, you'll let me know. If that's, we'll open the questions, then you can ask questions then.
Okay, great.
You can answer questions right now, too.
I don't know what I missed, so I have to read it.
That's right. and you'll watch it. So hopefully this will all roll up into a big long video. And yeah, it's recording. Good. So let me pray a prayer, and we'll be. In fact, no. Let's see. Marianne, would you offer a prayer to close our time?
Certainly. Lord, we look to you for our comfort, our follow through on what you have called in our lives. We thank you that we can continue to learn about your people. Lord, we pray that in all things we would be the ministers that you call us to be, and that we can provide the comfort that that you would have. Lord, there will be times I already know where I'm not going to know what to do, but you are the one who will give direction. And we thank you for that. Thank you for Peter and his willingness to train us. Help us take these things to heart, we pray. Amen.
Amen. God bless you both, and we'll see you on next Wednesday morning at 9:30. I'm going to
Thank you.
shut off the recording.